Hey family, it's season 6 here at the Hope TV, and I'm so excited to bring Theology in 30 to the Hope TV platform. Just a little history. Theology in 30 was birthed in 2018, y'all remember, on my Instagram and Facebook pages. And I want to thank our executive producer, Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr., and the entire House of Hope Atlanta media and marketing family for allowing me to bring Theology in 30 to Hope TV. Now, just to give a little information about the show and what we do here on Theology in 30, it came out of my desire to encourage and engage in theological discourse with my friends, colleagues, families, and people who are just curious. So this show is exciting in so many ways. Right here, I have to stop and thank all of our supporters and our viewing audience who have been with us since 2020. Thank you so much. I can't believe it's 2022. So you know what I need you to do, because I love you all and I appreciate your support. I need y'all to let me know that you're here. Say something in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. Also, you can feel free to ask a question during our episode tonight, and we will try. I said try. We will try to answer your question live while you're watching this episode. We also want to grow our viewership, so I need you to do 2 things. Follow us at the Hope TV on Instagram, and also we need you to share this page from our page to your page, because we know you know somebody who's curious about theological questions as well. So let me say, in introduction of tonight's episode, I know that I have some amazing preachers, teachers, scholars, and just people who are interested and curious about ministry watching, who, whenever you teach, your lessons are prepared 90 days in advance. I know that's you, but that's not me. If I can be honest, this season has challenged me in so many ways to write and to stay productive. And because we want to be thorough and we want to be relevant, but there's so much happening. Sometimes the sermon writing process and making sure that there's enough theology and research behind the sermon can be a challenge. And so I believe tonight, our guest, the Reverend Dr. George Miller III, is going to help us busy pastors who find ourselves struggling at times to fit enough theology in a message, but also finding the time to sit down and really internalize the content that we have in our messages. So I invited my brother. This is my brother. He is a preaching machine and an amazing teacher. He grew up in the Metropolitan Baptist Church in Washington, D.C., under the pastorate of the renowned Reverend Dr. H. Beecher Hicks Jr. He grew up and was exposed on a very personal level to some of the greatest, and I mean greatest, theological minds and preachers in the country. And it was in this environment that he received his call to ministry. He's earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from Morehouse. So if I have any Morehouse brothers watching, I need y'all to let me know. I need you to say something in the comments. And he mounted the pulpit less than an hour after his graduation to preach his first sermon. In 2005, he was rewarded a Master of Divinity degree from the prestigious Candler School of Theology at Emory University, my alma mater. And additionally, Reverend Miller has obtained a Master of Business Administration degree from Augusta State University. And y'all thought I was done, but there's more. A Doctor of Ministry degree from the Interdenominational Theological Center. And his focus was in Black church and social justice. He's a great husband, friend, father, and pastor of the Elam Baptist Church in Augusta and Martinez, Georgia. And every time I hear him, I see something in the biblical text that I've never seen before. So Theology in 30 audience, will you join me in welcoming Pastor, the Reverend Dr. George Miller III. Say hello to everybody tonight.
God bless you. Happy day. I'm so glad to be here on Theology in 30. This is awesome. This is incredible. and I'm honored to be with my sister beloved in Jesus' name.
Honored to have you, bro. Let's just get into it. Um, I was saying on Instagram just a few days ago that preaching should be theology in street clothes. That preaching should be
Okay.
theology in street clothes. And
All right.
so, what I love most about preaching is that we get to communicate the gospel in ways that anyone can relate to and understand. And you are really good at that. So, I want to ask you this question: what do you love the most about your practice of Black preaching? Let's go.
I love the way in which Black preaching historically and even up until present age is allows us to really be creative and stretch the conversation to really deal with not just spiritual or celestial issues, but everyday practical issues. What is God saying about this, not just historically or biblically, but what is God saying now? How do we work through this? And preaching is such a dialogue, and oftentimes we talk about dialogue, we're talking about call and response, right? But the way
Yes.
I approach preaching is not just the call and response aspect of the dialogue, but I'm working through this issue theologically. Let's work through it together. That's how I approach preaching. I'm not coming to you with answers. This is what I'm struggling with, what I'm thinking about, what I sense the Lord doing. And in this conversation, let's see if you sense God doing the same thing or if you agree with me in what I believe God is doing. I like the
I love
liberty that Black preaching allows us to engage in.
I love it. I love it. And so you're already getting to uh, the meatier
I'm
part
sorry.
or the
I'm
more
sorry.
the substantive part of our conversation. I thought we are gonna get here later, but since we're already here, um,
Sure.
I want to ask you this question: how do you, as a pastor, with everything that you have going on, I've had the wonderful opportunity and the pleasure and the honor of meeting your family. You're a full time husband, you're a full time dad, you have beautiful kids who demand a lot of attention. So, if you're going to have this theological dialogue with me as I'm walking along in the sermon with you, how do you make that happen with everything else that you have going on? Kind of walk us through how you write your sermon between Monday and however long it takes you.
Well, I think one of the things that's important is I'm not a novice. I think that's helpful. I think you can take on additional responsibilities the more you mature, especially as a pastor, the more you mature
Absolutely.
in your pastorate as a woman or man of God. Okay. So I'm not a novice. I've been preaching now. My bio says since 2002. That's when I got licensed. But I was bootlegging a couple of years before that. So you're
Right?
talking about 20, you're talking about 20 years, um, 20 plus years of wrestling with the text over it. I'm at a place now where it's getting to the point where there are very few biblical texts that I have not preached at some point in my. I've been pastoring since 2005, on and off. So there's a familiarity with the biblical text. There's life experience. I'm in my early 40s now. There's life experience, and so one of the things I've learned to do is, of course, not to wait till Saturday night to throw something together. Okay, not even wait till Friday night or Thursday night. But I'm wrestling with the text. I try to take the best part of my week is Sunday afternoon after church because I feel like from that point until right around midday, Monday, evening Monday, I can be free. Then around
Yes.
Tuesday, and even then I'm wrestling, thinking about it. But even around Tuesday, I'm thinking about it. And I plan my preaching out. Like you talked about, I'm one of those guys. I started doing this 2, 3 years ago, more like 4 years ago now. But I will try and map out my preaching for 6 months to an entire year. I've done that where
Yes.
I sat down and mapped out, okay, this is what I'm doing, what we're doing. And in my mind, there's nothing, you know, that's no less religious or spiritual than getting it at the last minute. No, I plan it out. I'm planning it out. And I think God honors that. God honors that discipline. God honors that commitment. If the Holy Spirit tells me to do something different, that's what we're going to do. But that's how I do it. And then that allows me to be a husband. My wife's a preacher and my partner in ministry in so many ways. And so she understands the dynamic. She preaches as well at our churches. I have 5 boys. And here's the cool thing. My oldest is a teenager now, so he can shoulder some of this load with his little brothers. So that's a new dynamic.
Yeah.
And so life has a way of, working together, harmonizing itself, I think, when you're in the will of God. And all things do work together for the good. God graces us to do it. But yeah, there's a maturity there, there's an experience there, and there's a walk with the Lord that allows me, I think, to do this.
I know you just talked about how you didn't hear of that many people traveling or whatnot, but was there a specific inspiration for writing a book about it and creating content about being a Black traveler?
I barely saw any Black person, blogs, YouTube videos of anybody who looks like us traveling abroad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, okay, either put up or shut up, basically. I've been thinking for a while, thinking, okay, what's something I can do on the side or a little change on the side that hasn't been done before? And I thought about it, like, wait, no one's really wrote a Black travel guide for another country. And so I took that last summer to go out almost every day, going out, taking pictures, doing research, all that jazz. And that's what led up to writing the book, our first book.
Honey, what I think you need is a socket wrench.
I played JV basketball.
I'm sorry. I don't think it looks right.
This is good, and it's all good, baby.
Is it really all good?
If you love me enough to routinely test your handyman skills, not to mention the strength of your marriage, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure I'm in the right car seat.
I'm gonna call my dad.
Even if you purchase a new home, projects never end, they never stop. So it's like you think you finished something and here it is, something else comes up, seasons change.
I think this is where American homebuyers get it wrong. You've got this house that you're buying and you're going to have it for the next 15 to 30 years. Take care of the real repairs first.
Yeah.
If you want to put in flooring, if you want to paint or wallpaper or do new lighting, look for the Home Depot sales and the Lowe's sales and the suppliers out there that are going to train you for free. You can take a class to put in flooring. I think a lot of members want to do the HGTV house right off the bat. The things that are improvement related, take your time. You've got time. You don't need to run out and buy furniture for a house. You don't need to live in it. Understand your home. Your home has a vibe. How do you want it to feel? How you want it to look? You're not going to know that within the first 6-7 months of living in that home. It takes about a good year. Slow down. You don't need the biggest, the baddest, the best. You need the most affordable.
So I hear you saying there is no substitute for discipline, for hard work, and for practice. As you mature as a pastor, you just began to pick up these methods and these ways of making sure the work is done by the time you get to Sunday. I love that. So let me ask you this. Is there one central theological claim that when you look back on all of your messages, we know that your doctorate is in Black church and social justice. But is there one central theological claim that you see coming back every, time and again in a message, you see this one theological claim?
That is a phenomenal question. And you know what? Can I pull the curtain back a little bit on the show?
Absolutely.
Because when we talked about this sort of early on, you sent the dialogue through email and like, this question popped up, and I had to sort of go back in my sermons and back to the discipline point. I'm a manuscript preacher. I'm a notorious manuscript preacher. So
me too.
Yeah, Dr. Hicks was my childhood pastor. My mother was my pastor for a long time. So Dr. H.B. Hicks is a manuscript. So my understanding of preaching fundamentally is manuscript. So I labor intensely over the manuscript. So, and I got a whole system, again, back to that discipline, whole system of cataloging and filing, a whole spreadsheet and all that kind of stuff. So I'm able to go back and look at messages. And when that question was asked, sort of in the pre-production, I was like, what is the overarching theme of my preaching? And here's what it is. It is the Lordship of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Coupled with the grace that comes along with that Lordship. That's been the thread and the theme. I think, I would like to think it was other stuff, honestly, Jennifer. I really would, and that may be my own desire and ego, but when I really look at it, that's what it is. That's what it has been almost the entirety of my ministry. It comes back to the Lordship of Jesus Christ. And a close second, or maybe in tandem with that, is the grace that accompanies that Lordship. When we accept Christ as Lord, the grace and the mercy that comes along with that. Everything else, secondary, tertiary, contrary. That is the primary, I think, theological claim that my preaching has made now these 20 plus years.
So I'm glad that you said that. I did not know what your answer was going to be going into this conversation. And you know that I'm in this journey of articulating what my homiletical theory is for the PhD program in Black Preaching and Sacred Rhetoric. Like, that's no mystery. So I'm living very close to this whole idea of exploring what you've been doing. I'm 22 years in. So exploring what I've been doing and figuring out what box it fits into, what exegetical toolkit or homiletical toolkit it fits into. And one thing that has been central to me and my preaching is, if the preaching is not about God, it's not preaching.
Surely.
And we both know that some sermons have some content, but there is no key theological claim leading back to, like you said, the Lordship of Jesus, or leading back to some claim about God's activity in the world and who God is, who God shows up as, right? And so I'm really glad to hear you say that. Let's stay there for a minute and talk about difficult texts, because there are some biblical texts where I know when I look at Esther, for example, some text in Esther, and a few other texts, you kind of have to, okay, what is this saying about God? What is what the text is speaking about God something that I want to echo in this climate? I mean, we can take that and run a whole bunch of places. But let me ask you, as a veteran preaching pastor, have there been some text that you preached and you were like, man, that was hard? And how did you deal with it? How did you wrestle with it?
Surely there have been many. I think we keep coming back to this theme about tenure and maturity and the like, and that, I guess we didn't anticipate it going here, but that's where it's trending. And I think that's very important, because as you live life, you will discover that you will come up on situations and circumstances as a pastor and preacher that's going to force you to preach difficult biblical texts. You cannot avoid them. I think when you're younger, first you can sort of cherry pick, especially if you're not pastoring. You can cherry pick. For me, I'll just generalize it by saying this: the texts that have always dealt with death, in particular the death of young people,
Yes.
children, babies, stuff like that, has always been a challenge for me. I started pastoring. I got married, started pastoring, and had my first child very close together within like the same year, 2-year period. And so that's always been very difficult for me to preach those kind of situations, to be in funerals where I had to preach funerals for young people. Okay. Babies. I forget, I never forget, I was part of one funeral of a baby. It's a baby. I mean, a baby. And I had at that time, I still have a 2-year-old. I have 5 boys, so I still have a 2-year-old. But back then, I think I had 2 or 3 small children, and to sit there in the service and see the little baby's casket up front, and to hear the little brother. They got the picture of the baby on the screen, and to hear the little brother, older brother, who was not much older, call the name of his baby brother on the screen, just broke me down. I boohooed and cried and wept hard. I'm not talking about a lonely Denzel Washington glory tear. I'm talking about full on tears. I mean, full on tears, snot, the whole deal.
Yes.
And you still got to get up and preach.
Yes. So
It requires
that
yeah.
I mean, that leads me to the next question. When you are in those moments, because I think as preachers, we don't talk about this kind of stuff, how when the sermon is hard and it's a struggle to even get through the sermon. Let me ask you this. What did you tell yourself when you heard that voice of the big brother calling out for their sibling? What did you tell yourself to stay focused in that moment? Or did you pause and just take a moment to be present with the family?
Yeah, I mean, that was prior to the moment. There were moments during that sermon. One thing I always do, right, wrong, or indifferent, I always have this ethic about duty. Okay, George, you have a duty. George, we're talking about preaching, right? What is preaching really? In some sense, it's speaking for God, because the people want to hear from God. I got to figure out how to help this family in this moment make some sort of, if not sense, some sort of, I can't say my words that God gives me is really going to help that much. But maybe it can at least point them in a direction. That window or door may be way down the road, but there it is in that direction. It's Godward. It's that way. You got a duty, George. Pull it together. And I right, wrong, or indifferent. And I've always even trained my associates. I train them that way. When I was executive pastor at my last associate ministers, and there'd be times when they were just full on in emotion, and I would have to tell them, all right, we got to do, we got something we got to do. All right, the invitation's being extended. Put your shoes on, wipe your face, let's go. We are God's agents in that moment. And that's when I had to funeralize my grandmother. I pulled it together and said, okay, George, all right, you have a duty to do. You're God's agent. And that served me well. It has. That's kind of my fail-safe to get me through those difficult moments.
So one thing that has been evident for me whenever I've heard you preach, and I've heard you preach several times, either live or just watching your broadcast, your church's services. And one thing that I've noticed is you always seem to be full. And what I mean by that is it is evident to me there is a devotional journey that accompanies
I
your
thought you said I
preaching.
was getting big. I thought you were going to say I'm getting fat. That's what I thought you were going with that. And I was about to say, you going to
No,
really, we're going to do that tonight?
not tonight, but but you know, like that. When I say full, it's like he talks to God.
Nice.
You budget. You pay bills.
Yet somehow, women like you, like me,
Are 80% more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to save ourselves by setting a goal to save 2% more of our income for our retirement.
Why 2?
1% honors you.
And 1% honors all womankind.
So come on. Learn more about the 2% challenge at WeSaySaveIt.org.
For the busy pastor who has, like you, a family, obligations, you just started teaching. So how do you stay full when life is when life is pushing you toward empty? When there's so much grabbing for your attention and your mind and your energy, right? How do you stay full?
Wow. I think I finally figured out a couple years back how to have a walk with the Lord and a devotion to God that's ongoing. Over the years, I've learned how to commune with God basically all the time. I'm not saying I'm always in prayer. I'm not saying that. Matter of fact, somebody might say that Miller's prayer life is off because I don't go lay out before the Lord on Saturday night in preparation for Sunday for hours. I don't put on sackcloth and ashes. I don't do all that kind of stuff. I don't. Here's the truth. You want to know the truth, Jennifer? Here's the truth. People don't want to hear this because they love the whole 40 hours for one sermon thing. They love that whole thing. It don't take me 40 hours.
Fosdick, right?
Fosdick. It don't take me 40 hours. There was a time where I labored intensely, but again, I done been to school 15 times. And there's this continual conversation that I have with God, and I ask God the hard questions. I'm wrestling with the hard issues. I'm not dealing with just the surface anymore. God is big enough to answer and handle our questions, and so when I ask them, I usually get some insight, something that I think will help the people.
I love it. Something to help the people. It is a Christ-centered message, but it is a message that desires to meet people at the point of their needs.
Has to.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
How can it not in COVID? How can we not meet people where they are with COVID? What the Bible talks about? I mean, where COVID at in the Bible? It ain't in the Bible. There's plagues and pestilence, but we got to deal with stuff that we haven't had to deal with in 100+ years. It has to meet them where they are.
Absolutely. I actually want to stay there, but we are almost to the 30-minute mark. And so, I want to give you a chance to just tell us what you want us to know about your preaching, because like I said, every time I hear you, I learn something, or I'm able to see the text from a perspective that I hadn't thought about. I'll never forget, you were teaching a session. We were down in Bolingbrook. You were teaching a session, and I was just blown away, because I was like, how did he come up with that? I don't even remember what the text was, but I was like, how did he come up with that? So before we close, just kind of leave us with what you want people to know about your preaching, what you enjoy the most about your preaching, or maybe what you struggle with the most. I'll just let you choose whatever you want to share in closing.
How about this? I will tie all that up in one bow. Here's what you need to know about my preaching. Here's what I enjoy about my preaching. And here's what's challenging me about my preaching, is that it's changing. It's changing. That every couple of years, 2 or 3 years, I see and feel God changing the tone, the tenor, the nature of my proclamation, the presentation of the proclamation. And I like my comfort zone, and God is always pushing me and us out of our comfort zone.
Yes.
So I don't like that part, but at the same time, I enjoy it, because it means that I'm maturing and getting better. Amen. And walking with God and allowing God to move in my life in ways that God sees fit, and not George.
Okay. I didn't think you were going to leave me like that. I'm over here. I want to lift my hands because you're helping me, because like, it has been a struggle for me to work on something that I'm using, to work on my preaching while I'm preaching. But you just freed us up. You said your preaching is changing and you're a veteran. So if there's a new preacher watching right now, or just somebody who's, just getting started on their journey in ministry and learning and reading the Word of God, it's okay for God to shift your perspectives. That's called growth. That's called growth. And so I just believe we may have to have you back, Dr. George, because I need to hear some more about this. I need to hear some more. To our Theology in 30 audience, I told you tonight's show would be engaging and thoughtful, and it was. So I want to thank you, Dr. George, for just being you.
Thank you.
You understood the assignment. And so it is appreciated. We got to go. That will conclude tonight's Theology in 30 episode. Until next week, remember, we are the House of Hope Atlanta. Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr. is our pastor, and we believe that life with God is better in every way, every day. I want to thank my brother again for coming to share with us, and I want to thank our viewing audience for hanging out with us tonight. Until next week, be blessed, family, and know that God loves you unconditionally. See you next week.